Proposed mechanisms to circumvent due process. The challenge of addressing an estimated 50 to 60 million undocumented immigrants in the United States has prompted exploration of mechanisms to bypass due process, aiming for rapid deportation within a legal system anchored by the 5th and 14th Amendments. Proposals such as redefining invasion, declaring war, invoking national or state emergencies, and expanding expedited removal seek to overcome constitutional protections that mandate fair hearings for all persons. Each mechanism, however, faces significant legal, practical, and political barriers, rooted in judicial precedent, resource limitations, and public opinion. The following analysis evaluates these approaches, highlighting their constraints in achieving swift enforcement against the backdrop of a complex immigration landscape. A redefining invasion. Article 4, Section 4 obligates the federal government to protect states against invasion, historically interpreted as armed state-sponsored attacks, as in the prize cases in 1863. Proposals to redefine invasion to include illegal immigration, citing 1.5 million border apprehensions and 700,000 gotaways in 2023, argue that undocumented immigrants constitute a non-armed invasion potentially facilitated by United States policies, such as sanctuary cities or foreign governments. Courts, as in Padilla v. Bush in 2002, reject this, requiring evidence of organized hostility, which is absent despite the scale of 50 to 60 million. Redefining invasion via congressional law or presidential order faces judicial scrutiny and does not eliminate due process, as hearings remain mandatory under Zedvitas v. Davis. The potential for undocumented immigrants to acquire weapons, with 300 million firearms in the United States, does not meet invasion criteria, as less than 5% have serious convictions and no widespread arming is documented. A declaring war. Declaring war on undocumented immigrants was considered but deemed legally impossible, as civilians are not enemies under constitutional or international law, including the Geneva Conventions. Such a declaration would violate due process protections as affirmed in Boumediene v. Bush, and face immediate court injunctions. The Posse Comitatus Act prohibits military involvement in domestic enforcement without congressional authorization, and scaling military action to address 50 to 60 million would be logistically unfeasible. A national emergency. A president can declare a national emergency under the National Emergencies Act, as seen in 2019 for border wall funding, redirecting $6 billion. This mobilizes resources but does not bypass due process, with deportations requiring hearings or expedited removals limited process. Judicial limits, as in Sierra Club v. Trump in 2019, and congressional oversight restrict effectiveness. Immigration and Customs Enforcement's $8 billion budget and 20,000 agents deported 186,000 in 2023, insufficient for 50 to 60 million, estimated to cost $315 billion. Or expanding expedited removal. Extending expedited removal nationwide, removing the 100-mile and 14-day limits, was proposed to minimize due process. The Department of Homeland Security's 2019 attempt was blocked in Make the Road New York v. Wolf in 2020 for violating due process and administrative procedures. Even if implemented, expedited removal retains screenings, and scaling to 50 to 60 million requires infrastructure far beyond current capacity, with a single 2008 raid of 389 individuals overwhelming systems. State emergencies or invasions. Governors can declare state emergencies as Texas did in 2021 with Operation Lone Star, mobilizing National Guard and state police with a $250 million budget. However, federal preemption, established in Arizona versus United States in 2012, restricts states to supporting roles, not deportations. Texas' 2022 invasion declaration was symbolic, with courts rejecting immigration as invasion in Padilla v. Bush. State actions like Texas Senate Bill 4 in 2023 were blocked for usurping federal authority, limiting governors' impact on the 50 to 60 million undocumented immigrants. These mechanisms falter against constitutional protections, judicial oversight, resource constraints, and political divisions, with 60% of Americans supporting some legal status. The legal system's reliance on precedent locks in due process, rendering systemic changes such as amending the 14th Amendment, unfeasible due to the need for 2/3 congressional approval and 38 state ratifications. Addressing the scale of 50 to 60 million undocumented immigrants requires strategies within current legal frameworks, as these proposals cannot bypass the entrenched constitutional and statutory barriers.